You know, when the Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences boasts about having a test with a 100% failure rate, most reasonable beings would take that as a warning, a red flag, a cosmic-sized hint that maybe, just maybe, you should transfer to a nice, safe accounting program on some peaceful agricultural world. But no. Every semester, bright-eyed students from across 17 different star systems line up outside testing chamber Omega-7 like it's the galaxy's most exclusive nightclub. Which, in a way, it kind of is. Except instead of overpriced drinks and bad music, you get psychological trauma and an immediate need for therapy. Professor Vexstar absolutely loves it. Standing at roughly 8 feet tall, with skin the color of old copper and 4 arms that he uses primarily for dramatic gesturing, Vexstar has been administering the mind probe test for the better part of 3 decades. And in all that time, watching student after student stumble out of his testing chamber looking like they'd just witnessed their own funeral, he has never once questioned whether maybe the test is just a tiny bit excessive. "Ah yes," he purrs to his assistant, a nervous little creature named Pip who looks like someone crossed a ferret with anxiety itself. "Another beautiful day to shatter some young dreams and expose the fundamental inadequacies of the adolescent psyche." The testing chamber itself looks like what you'd get if a medical examination room had a baby with a torture device. Clean white walls curve up to a domed ceiling studded with sensors, probes, and various blinking lights that serve no purpose other than to make students wonder what exactly they're about to measure. In the center sits the chair, capital T, capital C. It's not particularly threatening to look at, just standard Academy issue furniture. But every student knows that once you sit in the chair, the mind probe will dig into your consciousness like a cosmic proctologist with abandonment issues. The whole point, according to Vexstar, is to test mental resilience under extreme psychological pressure. The mind probe doesn't just read your thoughts. Oh no, that would be too simple. It amplifies them, reflects them back at you, and forces you to confront every embarrassing memory, shameful desire, and irrational fear you've ever tried to suppress. It's like having your browser history read aloud at a family reunion, except worse because it includes all the thoughts you never even typed. Outside the chamber, today's batch of victims, students, huddle together in various states of existential dread. There's Xyloth, a crystalline being whose natural luminescence has dimmed to barely a flicker. Quinari, whose normally pristine fur is now matted with nervous sweat. And poor little Nexus 9, an artificial intelligence in a mobile chassis who keeps running diagnostic checks on himself like a broken record. "I heard that last semester's top student lasted exactly 47 seconds before requesting immediate psychological counseling," whispers Xyloth, his crystal facets clicking together anxiously. 47 seconds? Quinari's ears flatten against her head. Brexon the Mighty made it 3 whole minutes and he still can't look at mirrors without crying. Nexus 9's optical sensors flicker rapidly. Computing probability of maintaining sanity post-examination. Results inconclusive. Error. Error. Why did I choose advanced psychology as an elective? Professor Vexstar observes this delicious display of pre-test terror through the chamber's observation window, all 4 arms crossed in satisfaction. 3 decades of perfect failure rates don't happen by accident. They happen because Vexstar has perfected the art of psychological demolition, and he takes genuine pride in his work. "Pip," he says, not taking his eyes off the trembling students. "Prepare the probe for standard nightmare configuration. Today feels like a good day to break some records." Pip, who has witnessed this routine far too many times, merely nods and begins the startup sequence. Banks of computers hum to life, displays show readouts that probably mean something important, and somewhere deep in the machinery, the mind probe begins its warm-up cycle. Just another typical day at the Galactic Academy, where higher education meets psychological warfare, and Professor Vexstar wouldn't have it any other way. That's when Jake Murphy walked in. Now Jake Murphy is what you might call aggressively average. 5'10", brown hair that looks like he cuts it himself, and the kind of face that makes you think he probably played JV basketball in high school but wasn't quite good enough for varsity. He's wearing a wrinkled academy uniform that looks like he pulled it out of a laundry hamper, and he's got this expression of mild confusion that suggests he either just woke up or is perpetually operating at about 70% brain capacity. "Oh hey," Jake says, spotting the group of terrified aliens. "Is this the line for that brain scan thing? Cool, I was worried I was gonna be late." The silence that follows could power a small star system. Xyloth's crystalline form dims even further. Quinari's fur actually stands on end, making her look like she stuck her claw in an electrical socket. Nexus 9's processors start making concerning whirring noises. Brain scan thing? Quinari squeaks. You mean the mind probe test? The examination that has psychologically devastated every student who's ever attempted it? Jake shrugs. Yeah, that one. Though honestly, I don't know why they call it a probe. Makes it sound all invasive and weird. It's just scanning brain patterns, right? Like a really fancy MRI or whatever. Professor Vextar, who has been observing this exchange from his control booth, feels something he hasn't experienced in 30 years of academic sadism. Genuine excitement. Not the usual pleasure he gets from watching students crumble, but actual scientific curiosity mixed with predatory anticipation. A human. The first human exchange student in Academy history, and this particular specimen seems to have absolutely no idea what he's walking into. Pip, Vexter whispers, his forearms trembling with barely contained glee. Are you recording this? Always, Professor, Pip squeaks back, though he looks distinctly uncomfortable. 3 decades of working with Vextar have given Pip a finely tuned sense of when things are about to go very, very wrong. Back in the waiting area, Jake has somehow managed to make himself comfortable on what was clearly not designed to be furniture. He's leaning against a wall panel that probably costs more than most planetary defense budgets, scrolling through what appears to be some kind of primitive communication device. So, like, how long does this thing usually take? Jake asks, not looking up from his phone. Because I've got advanced quantum theory at 2, and Professor Blinthick gets really pissy if you're late. Last week this kid showed up 5 minutes after class started, and she made him recite the periodic table in ancient Volcari, which, by the way, has like 412 elements because apparently they count stuff that only exists in theoretical dimensions. The other students exchange glances. This human is either the bravest being in the galaxy or the most catastrophically uninformed. Jake Murphy, is it? Professor Vextar's voice echoes through the waiting area's comm system, smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. Please, do come in. I've been so looking forward to meeting you. Jake hops up with the enthusiasm of someone who's about to get a free dental cleaning. Sweet, finally. You guys have been making this whole thing sound way more dramatic than it needs to be. It's just a test, right? How hard could it be? As Jake disappears into the testing chamber, the remaining students huddle closer together. Xyloth's light has now dimmed to the point where he's practically invisible. Quinari has started what appears to be some kind of prayer ritual. Nexus 9 is running continuous backup protocols on his memory banks. Should we warn him? Quinari whispers. Warn him about what? Xyloth's voice is barely audible. That he's about to experience psychological torture disguised as academic evaluation, that every student who's taken this test has needed extensive therapy afterward, that Professor Vextar takes genuine pleasure in watching young minds shatter like cheap pottery. Seems nice, Nexus 9 adds helpfully. For a biological entity whose species apparently lacks basic self-preservation instincts. Through the observation window, they can see Jake settling into the chair like he's about to watch a movie. He's even pulled out his phone again, probably to check social media while his consciousness gets systematically demolished. Professor Vextar circles him like a shark who's just spotted a particularly plump seal. So, Jake says conversationally, this is pretty cool tech, very retro sci-fi movie vibe. Are those sensors up there? Nice. And that's some serious computing power you've got running back there. Bet it cost a fortune. My dad's in IT and he's always complaining about hardware budgets. Vextar pauses in his circling. In 30 years of administering this test, no student has ever made small talk about the equipment. Usually by now, they're either hyperventilating or asking about the Academy's mental health services. Indeed, Vextar says, carefully. Shall we begin? Sure thing, Doc. Fire it up. Now, before we watch Jake Murphy cheerfully volunteer himself for psychological annihilation, it's worth understanding exactly what Professor Vextar has put other students through. Because the mind probe test isn't just difficult, it's not even just traumatic. It's specifically designed to find whatever makes you tick and then systematically dismantle it, like a sadistic cosmic mechanic. Take Zorp the Magnificent, for example. 3 months ago, Zorp strutted into testing chamber Omega-7 like he owned the place. And why wouldn't he? The guy was a natural telepath from Scion Prime, could read minds across 3 star systems and had an ego roughly the size of a small moon. His people literally called him the Magnificent because apparently they'd run out of more creative superlatives. This examination will be trivial for one such as I, Zorp had declared, his mental voice dripping with condescension. I have gazed into the deepest thoughts of senators and emperors. What could this primitive device possibly show me that I have not already mastered? 17 seconds later, Zorp was curled up in a corner, rocking back and forth and muttering something about purple elephants wearing his mother's jewelry. Turns out, when you're used to reading other people's thoughts, having your own thoughts amplified and reflected back at you is like staring into a funhouse mirror made of pure nightmare fuel. The mind probe didn't just show Zorp his thoughts, it showed him his thoughts, thinking about his thoughts, thinking about his thoughts, creating an infinite recursive loop of narcissistic self-reflection that basically turned his brain into psychological spaghetti. He's currently in therapy on a nice quiet agricultural world, learning to knit. Last I heard, he's gotten pretty good at scarves. Then there was Cleva. Sweet, brilliant, perfectionist Cleva from the honor system of Academia Minor. She'd graduated valedictorian from every educational institution she'd ever attended, had published research papers before most beings learned to walk, and maintained a 4 GPA while simultaneously earning advanced degrees in 17 different fields. Cleva lasted exactly 93 seconds. The problem wasn't that she had dark thoughts or shameful secrets. The problem was that she had one tiny, insignificant, completely normal moment of intellectual uncertainty buried somewhere in her subconscious. Just a fleeting instant from childhood where she couldn't remember whether the capital of Rigel 7 was New Geneva or New Cambridge. The mind probe found that moment, amplified it, and basically convinced Cleva that her entire academic career was built on a foundation of lies and ignorance. She spent the next 48 hours in her dorm room, frantically researching every fact she'd ever learned to make sure she hadn't been wrong about anything else. She's currently on academic probation after attempting to retake her kindergarten entrance exams. But the real masterpiece of psychological destruction was Blorthak the Destroyer. Blorthak was a Cranarian warrior, 7 feet of pure muscle and barely contained violence. His people are legendary across the galaxy for their fearlessness in battle. They don't retreat, they don't surrender, and they definitely don't admit to being afraid of anything. Blorthak had personally fought space pirates, alien death squads, and something called a quantum dragon that I'm still not entirely sure exists. So naturally, Professor Vexstar was particularly excited to see what the mind probe would do to someone who claimed to fear nothing. Turns out, Blorthak had a secret terror of butterflies. Not alien butterflies with acidic wings or carnivorous butterflies that hunt in packs. Regular, harmless, earth-stampered butterflies. Apparently when he was a child, his older brother had told him that butterflies were actually tiny demons that would steal his soul if they touched him. And even though adult Blorthak knew this was nonsense, somewhere deep in his warrior psyche, that irrational childhood fear had been quietly festering for decades. The mind probe took that fear and cranked it up to 11. Suddenly, Blorthak wasn't in a testing chamber anymore. He was surrounded by thousands of butterflies, all of them fluttering directly at his face, while his brother's voice echoed in his head, telling him over and over that the tiny demons were coming for his soul. 3 minutes later, the most feared warrior in 7 star systems was found, hiding under the chair, sobbing, and asking if someone could please call his mom. He's doing better now, thanks to intensive therapy and a carefully managed exposure program involving increasingly larger insects, though he still can't watch nature documentaries. Professor Vexstar tells these stories not as cautionary tales, but as greatest hits. Achievement unlocked. Psychological demolition. Each broken student is a trophy, each shattered psyche a testament to his skill at finding the exact pressure point that will make someone's mind collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. You see, Vexstar explains to new faculty members during orientation, the key is understanding that every consciousness, no matter how advanced or disciplined, has fault lines, cracks in the foundation. My job is simply to apply pressure until those cracks become chasms. And now, for the first time in his illustrious career of academic sadism, he has a human subject. A species known throughout the galaxy for their unpredictability, their illogical emotional responses, and their bizarre ability to function despite having brains that seem to operate on pure chaos and caffeine. Professor Vexstar has absolutely no idea what he's about to unleash. Back in testing chamber Omega 7, Jake Murphy has made himself comfortable in the chair with all the casual ease of someone settling in to watch Netflix. He's even found the little cup holder built into the armrest, which he's using to hold his phone while he finishes responding to what appears to be a group chat about weekend plans. Okay, he says, finally putting the phone away. I'm ready when you are. Should I close my eyes or something? Do I need to think about anything specific? My roommate said you guys might ask me to visualize geometric shapes, but honestly, I'm terrible at math, so that might be a problem. Professor Vexstar positions himself at the control console with the practiced grace of a conductor preparing for a symphony, except instead of music, he's about to orchestrate a complete psychological breakdown. Just relax, Mr. Murphy. The probe will handle everything. You won't feel a thing. Sweet. This is actually kind of exciting. I've never had my brain scanned before. Well, except for that time I got a concussion playing intramural hockey, but that was just to check for bleeding. This is like proper sci-fi stuff. Vextar's fingers dance across the control interface, bringing the mind probe online. Displays light up showing brainwave patterns, consciousness mapping protocols, and psychological pressure indicators. Everything looks normal. Standard startup sequence initiated. Beginning probe activation in 3, 2, 1. The chamber fills with a low harmonic hum as exotic energy fields align themselves around Jake's skull. Sensors lock onto his neural patterns, mapping the unique electromagnetic signature of human consciousness. For exactly 12 seconds, everything proceeds according to 3 decades of established protocol. Then Jake's brain responds to the probe. And the first thing that happens is every display in the chamber starts flashing error messages. "Haha," Jake says, completely oblivious to the chaos erupting around him. "Is it supposed to make that noise? Sounds like my laptop when I try to run too many programs at once." Professor Vextar stares at his instruments in growing alarm. The consciousness mapping system is showing readings that shouldn't be possible. Human neural activity is spiking across 17 different frequency ranges simultaneously. The psychological pressure indicators are fluctuating wildly, between states labeled existential terror and mild curiosity about lunch options. "Pip!" Vextar calls, his voice tight with confusion. "Run a diagnostic on the primary sensor array. We're getting anomalous readings across all channels." "Diagnostics complete, Professor." Pip squeaks back, his voice higher than usual. "All systems operating within normal parameters. The anomalous readings appear to be accurate." That's when the real problems start. The mind probe, designed to amplify and reflect a subject's thoughts, encounters something it has never experienced in 30 years of operation. Jake Murphy's consciousness doesn't operate like other minds. It doesn't follow logical pathways or maintain coherent thought processes. Instead, it's like a pinball machine designed by someone who was really high and had strong opinions about chaos theory. The probe tries to amplify Jake's surface thoughts and immediately gets overwhelmed by the sheer volume of concurrent mental activity. At any given moment, Jake is simultaneously thinking about the test, wondering if he remembered to do his laundry, composing lyrics to a song that doesn't exist, having an imaginary argument with a professor from last semester, mentally ranking the Star Wars movies in order of quality, and experiencing a random flashback to something embarrassing that happened in 7th grade. The system attempts to organize this mental chaos into coherent psychological profiles and basically has the technological equivalent of a nervous breakdown. Warning lights start flashing. Cooling fans spin up to maximum speed. Somewhere deep in the probe's quantum processing core, circuits that were designed to last for centuries begin showing signs of stress. Professor," Jake says, raising his voice over the increasing mechanical noise, "I think your machine might be having some issues. Want me to hop out so you can reboot it or whatever?" "No!" Vextar shouts, frantically adjusting controls that seem to have no effect whatsoever. "Stay exactly where you are. This is unprecedented, fascinating, revolutionary." What Vextar doesn't realize yet is that the mind probe isn't just malfunctioning. It's being fundamentally overwhelmed by the beautiful chaotic randomness of human consciousness. Jake's brain operates on principles that the probe's designers never anticipated. Where other species think in linear progressions or logical networks, humans think in what can only be described as controlled explosions of free association. The probe tries to map Jake's consciousness and discovers that his mind contains the complete lyrics to roughly 4,000 songs, half-remembered quotes from movies he saw 10 years ago, detailed knowledge about sports statistics for teams he doesn't even follow, 3 different internal voices arguing about whether he should have had cereal or toast for breakfast, and a running mental commentary that sounds like a particularly sarcastic nature documentary narrator describing his own life. But the real problem starts when the mind probe attempts to amplify and reflect these thoughts back at Jake, because that's when the feedback loop begins. Instead of showing Jake his thoughts, the probe starts broadcasting them, not just to Jake, but to every receiver, every sensor, every quantum-entangled component in the entire testing facility. And Jake Murphy's stream of consciousness, amplified by alien technology designed to break minds, is about to break something much more important: the laws of physics. What happens next can only be described as the most beautiful disaster in the history of advanced education. Jake's amplified thoughts don't just leak out of the mind probe, they explode out of it like a broken fire hydrant made of pure consciousness. Every screen, every speaker, every quantum communication device in the academy suddenly becomes a window into the chaotic wonderland of human cognition. Testing, testing, echoes Jake's mental voice through the facility's public address system. Is this thing on? Oh wait, I'm not actually talking. Weird. Hey, is anyone else hungry? I could really go for a sandwich right now. Not like a fancy sandwich, just basic turkey and cheese, maybe some mustard. Do they have mustard in space? They must have mustard in space. Everything's better with mustard, except ice cream. That would be gross. In the advanced quantum theory classroom, Professor Blinthak stops mid-lecture as her holographic equations are replaced by Jake's mental image of a turkey sandwich floating through the cosmos with tiny mustard rockets. Although, Jake's voice continues, now broadcasting directly into everyone's neural implants. Ice cream sandwiches are pretty good. Remember those ones with the chocolate wafer cookies? Man, I haven't had one of those in forever. My mom used to buy them for special occasions. Wonder how Mom's doing. Should probably call her. Wait, can I call Earth from here? What's the intergalactic roaming charges on something like that? Probably expensive. Everything's expensive these days. Back in testing chamber Omega 7, Professor Vexstar is frantically trying to shut down the mind probe, while Jake continues his oblivious mental monologue. The problem is that the probe has now synchronized with Jake's brainwaves, and attempting to disconnect it would be like trying to unplug a computer while it's actively defragmenting the universe. Jake says out loud, completely unaware that his thoughts are now being broadcast to roughly 40,000 students and faculty across 17 different star systems. I just remembered that thing from middle school where Tommy Henderson told everyone I wet my pants during the field trip to the zoo, but I actually just sat in a puddle of spilled soda. Never did get to set the record straight on that one. Tommy Henderson, if you're somehow receiving this telepathic space broadcast, you were wrong about the pants thing, buddy. The Academy's central computer system, trying to process and catalog Jake's stream of consciousness, begins showing critical errors. This is a machine designed to handle the advanced mathematical concepts of 17 different civilizations simultaneously, and it's being overwhelmed by one human's mental recreation of every song lyric he's ever half remembered. Sweet Caroline, ba-ba-ba-ba, Jake's mental voice sings tunelessly through the quantum physics laboratory, causing a delicate experiment involving dark matter to collapse because even subatomic particles apparently can't concentrate when someone's doing karaoke in their heads. Good times never felt so good, so good, so good. Wait, is it so good, so good, so good, or so good, so good, so good, so good? I can never remember. Why do they make the lyrics so repetitive? It's like they ran out of words and just decided to phone it in. In the library, students trying to study for finals find their textbooks displaying Jake's detailed mental ranking of every movie he's ever seen, organized by categories like movies that would be better with more explosions and movies my dad fell asleep during. His thoughts bounced from cinema criticism to whether he remembered to turn off his coffee maker this morning to a surprisingly insightful analysis of why pineapple pizza is actually a perfectly valid food choice that people only hate because they're conformists. Professor Vexstar, now openly panicking, turns to Pip. Cut the power. Cut everything. Shut it all down. I can't, Professor, Pip squeaks, his small claws flying over backup control panels. The probe has achieved some kind of resonance cascade with the subject's neural patterns. It's drawing power directly from the Academy's main reactor. Meanwhile, Jake's consciousness continues its beautiful rampage through the collective academic experience of the Galactic Academy. His thoughts jump from childhood embarrassments to shower arguments he won against people who weren't there, from half-remembered dreams about flying to detailed mental reconstructions of every awkward conversation he's ever had. Oh man, and that time in freshman year when I tried to ask Lisa Rodriguez to the homecoming dance but accidentally asked her if she wanted to go to the homework dance instead? Jake's voice echoes through the dormitories, causing several alien students to pause their own studying and wonder what a homework dance would even look like. She just stared at me for like 10 seconds and then said, "Sure, I guess," because she was too nice to laugh. Great girl, Lisa Rodriguez. Wonder if she ever became an astronaut like she wanted. The mind probe's displays have now completely given up trying to show coherent psychological profiles, and are instead projecting random images from Jake's memory. Students walking past the testing chamber windows are treated to a slideshow of Jake's life, including his 3rd birthday party, that time he got stung by a bee and cried for an hour, his high school graduation where his cap fell off during the ceremony, and approximately 400 different mental images of sandwiches he's eaten over the years. You know what's weird about space? Jake continues, his thoughts now somehow interfering with the Academy's artificial gravity systems, causing papers to float randomly through hallways. It's really big, Like, really, really big. But also, it's mostly empty, which means it's basically the universe's way of being really inefficient with storage space. If I was designing the universe, I'd probably make it more compact. Maybe add some shelves or something. Professor Vextar stares at his instruments in growing horror and fascination. The mind probe isn't just broadcasting Jake's thoughts anymore. It's somehow integrating them into the fabric of local space-time. Jake Murphy's casual observations about cosmic architecture are literally rewriting the laws of physics in a 3-meter radius around the chair. Reality itself is starting to glitch. The end comes not with a bang, but with Jake Murphy wondering out loud whether hot dogs are technically sandwiches. I mean, think about it, his mental voice echoes through dimensions that probably shouldn't exist. It's meat between bread, right? But it's only one piece of bread that's folded over, so maybe it's more like a taco? But then are tacos sandwiches? This is actually a pretty deep philosophical question when you think about it. That's the moment when the mind probe finally gives up. Not gradually, not with warning alarms or emergency shutdowns, but all at once, like a computer that's been asked to divide by zero while simultaneously running 47 different programs and computing the meaning of life. There's a sound that's part mechanical scream and part existential sigh, followed by a series of small explosions that smell vaguely like burnt circuitry and disappointed expectation. Sparks shower from the ceiling sensors. The quantum processors make a noise like a cat being strangled by a philosophy textbook. Every screen in the chamber displays the same message. Error 404. Coherent thought process not found. And then, suddenly, blissful silence. Jake blinks a few times and looks around the now smoking testing chamber. Huh, that was weird. Did anyone else hear that voice talking about sandwiches? Sounded like me, but I wasn't talking. Technology, right? Always doing weird stuff. Professor Vextar stands frozen at his control console, staring at the wreckage of 30 years of psychological torture disguised as academic evaluation. His 4 arms hang limply at his sides. His expression is the look of someone who has just watched their entire worldview get fed through a blender, operated by a caffeinated philosophy student. So, Jake says cheerfully, hopping out of the chair and stretching like he's just finished a pleasant nap. Did I pass? The question hangs in the air like a cosmic joke. Pass? The human had just accidentally destroyed the most sophisticated consciousness analysis system in the known galaxy. He had turned a precision instrument of psychological demolition into a smoking pile of very expensive scrap metal. His thoughts had been so chaotic, so fundamentally illogical, that they had literally broken the machine designed to break minds. Professor Vextar starts, then stops. In 3 decades of administering the mind probe test, he has never encountered a situation that his protocols didn't cover. Students either broke down in tears, fled the chamber in terror, or curled up in corners muttering about their deepest fears. They didn't casually destroy reality and then ask about their grade. The probe, Vextar says slowly, as if speaking to himself, was designed to find psychological pressure points in any known form of consciousness. It has successfully analyzed the mental patterns of beings from over 300 different worlds. It can map neural pathways, catalog emotional responses, and identify cognitive vulnerabilities with 99.7% accuracy. Cool, Jake says, pulling out his phone to check the time. Sounds expensive. It was, Vextar continues, his voice gaining a note of hysterical wonder, the most advanced psychological analysis tool in the galaxy. It could process thoughts faster than they could be thought, amplify consciousness beyond the bounds of normal perception, and reveal the deepest, most hidden aspects of any mind. Was? Jake asks, glancing at the still smoking wreckage. Oh, right. Bummer about the fire damage. You guys have insurance, right? Professor Vextar stares at Jake Murphy, this aggressively average human who had just accomplished something that no student in academy history had ever managed. Not by being braver or smarter or more psychologically resilient than the others, but by having a mind that operated on principles so fundamentally chaotic that advanced alien technology couldn't even recognize it as a coherent thought process. You, Vextar says finally, are the first student to ever complete the mind probe test. Sweet, Jake grins. So I passed? You didn't just pass, Vextar says, gesturing at the destroyed equipment. You achieved something beyond passing. You transcended the test entirely. The probe couldn't break your mind because it couldn't understand your mind. Your consciousness operates on a level of beautiful, perfect chaos that our science cannot even begin to categorize. Jake considers this for a moment. Is that good or bad? I have absolutely no idea, Vextar admits. In 30 years of psychological evaluation, you are the first subject to leave me completely baffled. Congratulations, Mr. Murphy. You have officially broken the unbreakable test. Outside the testing chamber, the crowd of terrified alien students has grown considerably larger as word spread throughout the academy about the strange noises and reality distortions coming from testing chamber Omega-7. They watch through the observation windows as Jake emerges, completely unharmed, and apparently unaware that he has just rewritten the rules of psychological evaluation. Hey guys, Jake says to the assembled crowd, that was actually pretty fun. You should totally try it. Though they might want to fix the technical issues first. The whole system kind of crashed halfway through. Xyloth, Quenari, and Nexus 9 stare at him like he's just casually mentioned that he spent the afternoon juggling black holes. It crashed? Quenari whispers. Yeah, started making all kinds of weird noises, and then there were some sparks. Probably just needs a good reboot, though. Most computer problems are like that. Jake checks his phone again. Oh man, I'm totally going to be late for quantum theory. Professor Blenthek is going to kill me. Nice meeting you guys. Good luck with your tests. And with that, Jake Murphy walks away, leaving behind a crowd of stunned aliens, one psychologically shattered testing chamber, and Professor Vextar, who is seriously considering a career change to something less stressful, like defusing quantum bombs or wrestling space bears. The mind probe test, which had maintained a perfect failure rate for 30 years, was quietly retired the following semester. The official Academy records list the reason as equipment malfunction, but Professor Vextar knows the truth. Sometimes, the most effective way to break something designed to be unbreakable is to not understand how it's supposed to work in the first place. And sometimes, the most beautiful victory is the one you win by accident. Jake Murphy never did find out exactly what he had accomplished that day. He passed advanced quantum theory with a B+, and graduated the following spring with a degree in interstellar communications and a minor in applied chaos theory. He still thinks hot dogs are probably sandwiches.